Dry, chilly weather in the eastern part of the U.S. Lasts for one more day. Rain on the west coast and snow inland of the Rockies. Next cold front will be heading east on Saturday with some showers. And we'll take a look at the always discussed, but we never seem to know exactly what's going to happen, and that is the long range. And that is all tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by our friends at Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. They're getting ready for winter, and so should you. They are Long Island's largest rock salt supplier, and they also have all the snow and ice melt products, the good ones like Mag, Ice Pellets and Flakes, and Pelledo, and of course other brands there too. You might need a new snow blower. Who doesn't want this who wouldn't love to find this 30-inch snowblower under the Christmas tree? And of course, we've got supplies in case you lose power, which can happen from time to time if there's a big storm, but we'll see. 631-756-1125, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area with the best prices around. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Happy December, Joe.
Yeah. Meteorological winter. There you go. Oh, now I disappeared. Just a second. Hang on a second. There we are. Yes, meteorological winter begins today. So, not that there's, these magical moments that that humans like to create, these constructs to keep things even. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. So,
speaking of, did you see last night? Did you have a chance to see the tree lighting last night at Rockefeller Center?
What do you think? I was watching Wednesday on Netflix.
Okay. When they finally did get around to lighting the tree at 9:58 p.m., 2 minutes before the show began, they counted down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and all of a sudden, the star at the top of the tree came on, and the rest of the tree was blank. And there must have been like 2 to 3 seconds, and one of the co-hosts of the show, you could hear him say, "Uh-oh," and then all of a sudden, all the other lights came on. But I was saying to Renata, I said that would have been hysterical if only the star came on, but the rest of the tree stayed blank. I see you lit your tree just now.
Well, David Scott on the chat board asked me why it wasn't lit. That's because I forgot to light it, and I had, and understandably so, Joe. I had the word for the day for me, Joe, was distraught.
And why were you distraught?
So before I explain, let me just say Anthony Orr, our resident hurricane statistician, hitting the tip jar tonight. Thanks for hitting Super Chat. And so has David Fuller, his leg is recovering, hopefully 3 more weeks of PT, physical therapy. I had a moment there. I forgot what PT stood for. Granted by Workman's Comp. I assume sometime next month, back to work. Knees are still sore. Yeah, it'll get there. You just got to give it time. I've been 4 months since my surgery, July, August, September, October, November, and my ankle still hasn't it's gone down in terms of the swelling, but it's still not all the way. So distraught, Joe. This is the definition of distraught. So every morning I go down to, I drive 20 miles to Nottely Dam. I go to the dog park first, which is what I did. That's closer. And then from the dog park, I drive the rest of the way to Nottely Dam, and there are trails there. And I meet a friend of mine who has a couple of Springer Spaniel brothers. So we walk, try to get 4 or 5 miles in. We walk. So I started training. Her dogs are off the leash. Mine wasn't. So I took my dog off the leash. And I did this last week. Not a problem. This morning, we went about, an hour and maybe 2 hours earlier than what we usually do. And if you go too early in the morning, apparently, there is deer scent everywhere. Of course, humans, I can't smell it, but the dogs do. Well, uh, JJ was fine. He'd be walking with the other dogs. We're all walking together. The next thing I know, the three dogs bolt into the woods. Two of them come back, and JJ doesn't.
Uh-oh.
And he was gone for a good hour. Okay. And you got to understand here, it's just to describe it. So I'm at the bottom of a dam where there's this raging river, like whitewater rafting type
Right. Right.
river. There's a huge mountain on one side with a cliff that goes straight down, and there's all these hills, and it's all woods there. I mean, just all woods. So I was distraught. Honestly, I thought he was gone.
Right.
I thought he was gone. So as it turned out, I drove my truck back up to the top of the hill because I had to get a phone. I couldn't even get a phone signal. I called my vet because I wanted to get the. I couldn't remember if the vet chipped him or if um, uh, the shelter where I got him, had chipped him. But turns out my vet chipped him, so I had to get They sent me the chip numbers and everything else. And then my friend who stayed down texted me and told me that JJ came back. So anyhow, it was emotionally it was horrible because he
Right.
I was in tears because I thought I really thought I lost him. I was in tears. But anyway, was so exhausted from whatever he was doing in that hour. He's been basically sleeping on the couch pretty much the whole day, and he's on there now. So again, that hour, that's what distraught means, folks. It was horrible. But he's here, and he came back as if nothing had happened. I have no idea what he was chasing. We've got some more super chat hits tonight, Joe. We have Julia B. Hitting the tip jar. Thank you, Julia. Most appreciated to hit the super chat tip jar. Steve Lapointe hitting super chat. Thank you, Steve. And Steve reminds everybody to hit the like button under the video because Joe and I love when you hit the like button. So anyway, weather-wise, everybody on social media in the weather world is getting all excited and all worked up about the blocking. Oh, it's all wonderful. Well, look, I'm going to say something here that is probably going to send me then people are not necessarily going to like, but I'm just going to warn everybody the two things. One is the Pacific is a big wild card in all of this, okay? But more importantly, be careful what you wish for, because if you wind up getting too much blocking, folks in the north, the snow lovers in the Northeast and in the Mid-Atlantic and in the northern Mid-Atlantic states will be, and I'll use the word for the day, distraught, because everything will wind up going further south. And if you want an example of that, just take a look at today's 12Z GFS, and that's what would happen. You take a low down moving southeast into the Carolinas, and you're lucky if you see high clouds up in eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. So again, be careful what you wish for, because you may get it and get it soon.
Well, they may also have looked at what the Climate Prediction Center has said for the period from December 9th through the 13th. And if you'd like to allow me to
tell us, Joe, tell us
share,
what did our friends at the Climate Prediction Center say for the period from, what was it, the 12th to the what?
I believe from the 9th to the 13th.
Oh, the 9th to the 13th. Okay.
But I will share that with you now. Here you go. You see that this stripe here is a slight risk of possible heavy snow,
Really?
which does not include necessarily the immediate New York area or Long Island, but it certainly would include me and also a swath from northern Virginia and portions of West Virginia across central and eastern Pennsylvania and on up into the mid and upper Hudson River Valley and across much of south central New England. Let me zoom in on that for you
And by the
here.
way, that that is not impossible. After what I just said, that also is not impossible, depending on strength of the block and whatever machinations are going on in the Pacific. So it's not that I disagree with what they're saying. I'm just pointing, just putting that little asterisk in there at the end of it, with regarding the whole setup with respect to the upper air.
Now, I also want to point out that that's a pretty long stretch. That's the 9th of December through the 13th. That is 1 week from from yesterday, next Wednesday, all the way through to a week from this coming Sunday, the 9th through the 13th. The slight risk of potential heavy snow in that entire hatched area that you see there, which covers a relatively broad area, but let's see, that's a
Well,
one, two, three, four. That's a 5-day
well,
stretch
could
right
it
there.
could it? Is there a discussion that goes with that or no?
I'm not sure. Let
Because
me just.
I'm thinking, Joe, could that be from multiple systems?
It certainly would seem that they would have to be that way um, to get that. I mean, I'm looking here also at the temperature outlook, and they have the risk of hazardous temperatures almost in that same time frame. This is not from the 9th to the 13th. This is from the 9th to the 15th, but there's a slight risk for much of the plains, Great Lakes, and Northeast for near or below normal temperatures. Well, actually, below normal temperatures. I'm not exactly sure what hazardous temperatures mean. Maybe much colder than normal, but you combine that with maybe a wave or two moving along the mid-Atlantic and Northeast coast, which could supply the moisture, and bingo, you get snow, and you could get more than just a few inches. You can get a lot of snow, but that's that's what that's what they. And let me stress put that term up there. Experimental.
Yeah.
It's experimental, ladies and gentlemen. And tomorrow night it may just as well go away. But right now, that's what's on the table, according to the Climate Prediction Center, for the latter part of next week into the following weekend.
Uh, yeah. Is there a time? Does it say on there what time that was issued? I'm just kind of curious.
They're usually issued at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll check again. But usually when they put out the daily 6 to 10 and 8 to 14, they also update the what they call the probabilistic and 8 to 14 day U.S. hazards. And is there a time frame on this? Made December 2022, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it came out just about 4.5 hours, 4 hours and 45 minutes ago.
I'm just trying to I'm just trying to figure out what guidance they probably relied on. Maybe more the 0Z than the 12Z package. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not sure either, but that's what's on the table for the moment. And I have seen cases where, they've issued something like that, and then the very next day it's gone. So,
yeah, and sometimes they hold on to it for more than a day or two, and then once it becomes apparent that it's not going to happen, then they make it disappear. Yeah, I mean this is long range, so who knows? I'm just
right.
looking back. I was just while you're talking, I was just looking back at some of the overnight guidance to see if the European, which only went out to the 11th, I mean really didn't show anything. It actually has snow. The European from last night had a swath of 6 inches plus from eastern Kentucky into southern West Virginia and western Virginia. I just want to see maybe how far south this goes. Um, la 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 la, and we'll take a look. And no, it didn't quite come to me. So all right, just checking. So, but you know what? Anytime you have blocking, like what we're seeing on the models, anytime you have that kind of blocking being indicated, and make no mistake, it's a very strong upper air high and surface high that's going to be building up across the North Atlantic and Greenland. Models become extra volatile. There's also a lot of nonsense going on in the Pacific that's creating some volatility too. Whether there's going to be ridging in the Northeast Pacific as the overnight GFS showed, or is there going to be a trough all of a sudden back in the western part of the United States and more ridging in the east with the block kind of hanging over the top, which would make it pointless because you wouldn't really have a source of cold air. So
Right.
so the bottom line is I think there's no way to know now how this is all going to evolve. We do know there's going to be blocking. We do know the NAO is going negative. We've got wild cards here in terms of how strong is that block going to be. If it's too strong, everything's going to get suppressed well to the south, which maybe is gives me a shot to see something from the standpoint of frozen precipitation, or is the Pacific going to be in a place where it's going to allow cold air to spread out across the United States? All of those are questions that are no way that we can answer those at the moment.
And on my Facebook memories, looking back just 1 year ago, I was into the third day. Bernard and I were into the third day of our Antarctic adventure. And I remember also right about this time that everybody was getting excited because the models were cooking up some kind of a major snowstorm around the 6th or 7th of December, which never really panned out. It kind of just completely fell flat. But you were telling me, I was all the way down there, and you were saying all the excitement that there was the potential for a major snowfall. And again, it never really panned out. So that should be a lesson, folks, even though Climate Prediction Center is suggesting something for later next week into the following weekend. No promises, 8 to 14 days out that any of that is going to actually occur. But I've been saying, and Joe has too, that this block is going to play a key role, and it doesn't happen overnight. It will, I think, will take its time in building up, but eventually it will build up to the point where by the end of the month of December, and especially into January, I think we're going to be set for a number of unseasonably cold, if not downright frigid, weather days. And of course, any little bit of moisture or precipitation that comes along could very well bring us some periods of snow as well. So just, be calm. Don't make any suggestion, as already we've had a few people on the chat board in recent days say the winter is dead, winter is over. We're not going to see any snow in December. We're not going to see any winter weather this year. Don't do that, because that weather can turn on a dime, especially in this part of the country, and I think that certainly can be the case.
It's December 1st, for God's sake. It's
the very
December
beginning of
1st, where the average
meteorological winter.
The average high temperature is in the upper 40s and low 50s from eastern PA to southern New England this time of year. Upper 40s, okay? So you need an anomaly of at least 15 degrees below normal in order to probably set up a snowstorm of any kind, even a minor event. And if you look statistically at how many times you get to 15 or more degrees below normal over the course of these, over the course of records, I would imagine it's probably on the low end of the number of times it's happened. So get a grip. We have some high wind warning stuff for western and north central New York and a few counties. Also some wind advisories up in northern New Hampshire and northwestern Maine. But otherwise, it's pretty quiet in the east. And then we get to the middle Mississippi Valley, where we've got some wind advisories from western Indiana, southwestern Indiana, across southern Illinois, much of Missouri, into Kansas, eastern Nebraska, up into the Dakotas. And then we've got a whole slew of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings from North Dakota, northwestern Minnesota, back through Montana. I think we may even have avalanche warnings up in northwestern Montana and northern Idaho. I think that's what that blue is, that bright blue. Yep, avalanche warning. Winter storm warnings throughout a lot of Idaho, western Wyoming into Utah, western Colorado. Winter weather advisories over a number of counties in Nevada, and also winter storm warnings up in the Sierra Nevadas in California. So all the action continues to be in the west, and this is all going to be with another low that's going to go up into the Western Lakes, and we're going to see another. What is this, like the third or fourth cold front in the last 8 or 9 days that's moved across the country?
Things are really rolling along.
Yeah.
A very progressive pattern.
Yeah, the next one coming through on Saturday.
Yeah. Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh,
see that's your
that's my cue, I guess, right?
Right, to talk a little bit so I can set up the snowfall forecast map from the National Weather Service.
All right. Well, it's going to be. We're going to have it right. By the way, this morning had a little surprise. I mean, I looked out the window. I'm saying, "Where's the sun?" Because I anticipated that we'd have mainly sunny skies. It turned out to be mostly cloudy, and then before you knew it, all of a sudden I looked really hard, and wait a minute, is that snow? Yeah, a little bit more than a heavy dose of dandruff, but there was snow coming down, little flakes. I'm saying, where did this come from? Little flurries out there. Eventually, that all moved on by, and the sun came back out, and it was nice and bright and sunny for the afternoon. Must have been some localized disturbance, or maybe a local renegade snow shower that passed over through my vicinity.
Well, there were a lot of streamers on the radar this morning that coming off Lake Ontario and Lake Erie that probably survived and made its way across. But a little surprise for you.
It's clear right now. And by the way, if you go outside after the show, of course, take a look at that moon, which is just past first quarter phase, and that very bright silvery white star shining, not twinkling and shining very brightly, is the biggest planet in the solar system, Jupiter. And they are together tonight, and they will be through the first half of the night before they set in the west after midnight. But you might want to check that out if you care to. Throw on a heavy coat, however, or at least a very heavy sweater, because it's nippy out there already. Here at Rancho Rayo, Joe, it's around 34, 35 degrees right now, just a couple of degrees above freezing. And we're probably going to be destined going down into the mid and low 20s during the late night and early morning hours tonight.
Well, I was 24 this morning. I think that was my low, although my thermometer here says 21, so maybe it got radiated down to 21 at one point. 40 right now here, so we're sort of holding on with the temperatures. The snow amounts from the latest round of winter weather in the west is on top of the snows that they've already gotten in the last few days. So in some cases it's mega inches. But in the areas where we've got these warnings up, an additional 2 to 6 inches being forecast back through western Montana and Idaho and down into Nevada, half a foot or more in some places. Some of the mountains getting up over a foot. Same for California. Some of the mountains getting another 2 feet there. And in the western half of Colorado, so to the west of 25 and west of Denver, we're seeing snow amounts that could top out to several to many inches in some of the highest elevations. Also in and around the upper peninsula of Michigan, still seeing some snow there, into Minnesota and the Dakotas. Not a lot here. We're talking about a coating up to as much as an inch or two. Here's the satellite loop tonight. Make it just a little bigger here. And you have virtually cloud-free conditions going on in the Northeast, with the exception of what is streaming off Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And you see those two patches there. Yeah, Joe, the stuff What you probably saw this morning, because I'm looking at the loop, the clouds coming off Lake Ontario are actually moving northwest to southeast. So that probably was the case this morning. Maybe something came off of there and just sort of broke away, and you had whatever was left of it by the time it got to you.
Yeah, and as I said, they don't often do that. They usually dry out before they make it down into Putnam County here in lower New York, but this one did, and we had a couple of little flakes, and but more, the thing that made the biggest impression on me was the fact I'm expecting to wake up to bright sunshine, and I looked out the window. I thought, "What the heck is this?" It's like gray, silver skies, and again, that was just due to one of those little ribbons, if you will, of moisture coming all the way down from the Great Lakes. But as you just said, Joe, severe clear right now
Yeah.
across our area.
Looking good. You got some clouds in the western Gulf streaming up into Oklahoma and Arkansas, and you can see the moisture coming off the Pacific into California, going northeastward up toward Idaho and Montana, and also on up through the Dakotas. Here's the radar. I'll give you a refresh here, and the radar is now fairly quiet. There's just whatever's left is a dying little area that's up in north central New York. Otherwise, there really isn't much of anything. We do have some scattered snow showers up in Maine. We have some that just moved off the upper peninsula of Michigan, so they look like they're about done. In California, a big area of heavy rain between San Francisco and L.A., and inland, of course, you go up to the northeast where the mountains are, and they're definitely falling as some snow and probably some heavy snow at that. Also in northern Nevada and on up into Idaho, you see the echoes there on the radar. Some in western Colorado, some in southwestern Utah, and then a rather busy-looking radar compilation across the great state of Montana, and a few scattered showers up off the Pacific Northwest. WPC, the folks at WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, in terms of rainfall, we're going to jump to liquid precip, Joe. This is Friday night into Saturday night, so this pretty much covers the period with the next cold front that's coming in, and not a whole lot here, just a tenth to a quarter of an inch from Louisiana northeast through the Tennessee Valley, and then on up the Appalachians, up the coast from Virginia, up through New England. So basically a tenth to a quarter with a few odd spots getting a bit more. Also, you see the moisture in California, not quite all the way down to Southern California, but in the central and northern part of the state doing well. And then along the coast, a new area coming into the Pacific Northwest. The next day to look at across the United States would be Saturday. That's Friday night into Saturday night. So Saturday night into Sunday night, it's mostly dry. There is some moisture streaming from Arizona to Oklahoma to the Tennessee Valley. Looks like a tenth to a quarter, with a few places getting as much as a half. Busy in California on day 3 with another surge coming in of rain and snow. Day 4, the moisture field shifts to the east. Day 5, it starts to come in to the northeast with a quarter to a half, and also down in the Tennessee Valley, depending on how that plays out. That goes away with another cold front, which should be really the last one of these fast-moving fronts, because then we're going to start to get into the blocking, and then you see this moisture building up from Texas northeastward into Tennessee, half to 3/4 of an inch of liquid there, and on day 7, it's still going on in the southern plains to the Tennessee Valley, where while the blocking high and the higher pressures spreading out make for a mostly dry weather in the east. So the 7-day totals, half to 3/4, pockets of an inch and a half up into Maine. You see the stripe from the Tennessee Valley to the southern plains, and of course the busy weather that continues out in the western part of the United States. A lot going on, but nothing major here. That's the thing. The stuff in the West Coast is a series of storms, one after another, that keep moving inland. No one storm is a powerhouse, but they're all enough to cause some problems, Joe.
And again, it's the fast movement. There's nothing that's going to, anything that happens to be in any one particular area, it's just going to be there for a relatively short time, no more than a day or so before it moves on. We don't have any upper level systems coming on down, closing off, causing a traffic jam, if you will, in the upper levels of the atmosphere that could slow everything down and cause a prolonged period of precipitation. I'm looking at the maps. I'm looking at the 18Z GFS now and trying to see if I could make anything out in terms of any kind of significant snowfall based upon what Climate Prediction Center is saying. And really, I don't see it. Everything is moving too quickly and too
unless
fast.
unless unless what they're and I'm just I don't know for sure. I don't know what's running through their heads, unless they're looking at all this blocking going on and saying, you know what, maybe the models are too overzealous with trying to take a uh, lower pressures up to the west, which is what this 18Z run did. The 12Z didn't do this. The 12Z because of the block, which I think makes more sense. If you're going to have blockiness up to the north, how are you going to take a low up to the left like that is beyond me. But we've seen stranger things happen. But you can see, maybe they just looked at this and said, yeah, with all this stuff going on and running around and the blocking, they came up with what they came up with.
Right. I'm wondering whether or not. Well, you keep talking. I'm gonna check to see if they.
Well, the other thing is, Joe, on the 12Z, you do have a low on Friday morning. That's that's in northeast Oklahoma, with this big 1042 high northwest of Lake Superior that's sort of enveloping around it. And, it takes a low east and east-southeast off the South Carolina coast, and it's got snow that develops in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, then eventually into Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, and then the low is still, moves basically southeast and goes, it goes down to 30 north and then goes straight east. It's basically saying the block is so strong this thing gets shoved way to the south. Maybe they're saying that's wrong. Maybe they're saying that the GFS is way too suppressive with this, and we're going to see something maybe further north coming up the coast instead. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
Well, I'm looking at the the long-range technical discussion, which actually they're headlining not with potential possible snowfall. They're actually saying heavy rainfall potential for portions of the eastern and central U.S. next week. And in the middle of the discussion, they say uncertainty in the forecast begins to increase significantly during the middle of the forecast period in terms of the evolution of both the western trough and energy in the northern stream. This uncertainty was highlighted by the rapidly increasing divergence in the solutions of the individual GEFS and European ensemble members. The latest few runs of the GFS have been wavering back and forth between retaining a closed low, but fell in line with other guidance by 6Z and depicting an open wave. So they're just as confused as we are.
And I just looked at Ann Sambles, Mrs. Ann Sambles, who is also confused because I'm looking at. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to last night's 0Z run, because when I saw this run this morning, I was like, whoa, because it was a cold run and a blocky run, and I thought it was pretty impressive actually. And you can see the block developing over Greenland, the troughing that comes into the east that gradually takes over, and also the ridging that goes on in the west. And I mean, this is where the model is going back and forth. It goes from having mostly ridging in the west and a trough off the west coast to wholesale troughing in the west and ridging coming back into the east after about 11 or 12 days. And still with the block in place, which is not impossible. It's just that it's just basically saying the Pacific is a problem. But I think there's a lot of model volatility going on when you have such, when you're looking at a teleconnection where you're going to be almost 2 standard deviations below the mean, the models don't handle that well.
See, and this doesn't make any sense. And I just read to you that by the middle of next week, they say that everything is going in all different directions and they're confused. But I'm looking at the Climate Prediction Center. They do have discussions for their 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks. And I'm expecting when I go to this, I'm expecting them to say, "Oh, we're totally confused on the 6 to 10 day outlook period. Forecast confidence above average." They're saying for the next 6 to 10 days, 4 out of 5 due to good agreement and consistency among the ensemble means, along with the temperature tools. So I don't understand why one division of NOAA is saying everything is totally confused after the middle of next week, while another division, the Climate Prediction Center, is saying that for 6 to 10 days out, they consider this above average.
Right, we have it all figured out.
Yes, exactly.
Well, one can't figure it out. The other one has it all figured out. Neither of us have it figured out. So I'm going to go, you know what? I think there's enough volatility here. We've got another split in the polar vortex going on in the stratosphere that's forecast by the GFS coming up. And I just think, that between that and the big upper high that's building up over Greenland, I'll go with the group that's confused because that's what I am. I'm confused.
Yep. I'm confused too. I've always said I'm one of those people who probably get a lot of boos from the weather audience by saying this. But I said I think we really ought to see on television that we really should go back to just the 5-day outlook, because once you go past 5 days, especially in the winter, especially with the model inconsistency of late, I mean, it's pretty well nigh difficult to try to expect or try to forecast anything beyond 5 days with any sense of accuracy. Of course, we have TV stations now that all, they're all going with 7-day outlooks, and in some cases 10-day outlooks. I love that. I'd love to see somebody sit down for let's say a month and just plot out what the accuracy is of the 9th and 10th day of those 10-day outlooks. And
you're fighting Joe. It's a lost cause.
I know
you're fighting a battle that you cannot win this battle. So
I know if to make more money, I'd probably go into the corporate office and say, hey, we should start doing 15-day outlooks.
Yeah.
And they'll say, that's a great idea, Joe. Work it up for us.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think at least through next Wednesday, we could pretty much settle that part of the argument because we're still in that fast flow pattern through next Wednesday. So the system coming into the west now, low goes to Lake Superior. Trailing cold front starts to form some showers Friday night in the Ohio Valley down into the south. We'll get some rain, which will be raining all the way up into New England with this on Saturday. Probably comes in during the morning, probably done by late afternoon or evening, and then it turns colder and drier behind it. That's going to last into Monday and probably Tuesday of next week. Then we get the setup with another low coming out of the southern plains. We warm up again for a day, and we get another cold front. And this, I think, should be the last one in this series that we've had, with a low that runs up the St. Lawrence Valley. So that looks like we'll probably get some rain from the Tennessee Valley all the way up into northern New England for Tuesday night and Wednesday. And then that goes out. And this is when we start to see the block to the north building high pressures up in eastern Canada. And it's after this time frame that it just gets confusing because of how the models are handling all of that. And on this particular run, all of a sudden there's a ridge back in the eastern part of the United States, literally building into that blocking high with a deep, a deep trough coming into the west and diving down into the Rockies. I mean, this is totally different from what the prior run did. And then it leaves troughing in the west with a big ridge in the east by the end of the forecast period around the 15th. I just think that this series today is to just discard it and let's go to the next run of the models and tonight, tomorrow, and see what it does. Because I just think that today's runs were just bizarre. They really were.
Well, first, I got a couple of things to mention off of the chat board. Number one, I just want to say thank you to Billy the Kid for the kind words. He said, "We miss you on News 12. You were always up front with the viewer." I had the great thing to have a boss in my news director, Janine Rose, who would always say to the staff, "We follow whatever Joe does or whatever Joe says," because I know that there are not a few other TV outlets where the news director or the executive producer would actually tell the weathercaster or meteorologist in front of the camera, "We want you to say this and we want you to say that. We want you to fire everything up so that people get excited or get scared or watch us." But that was never the case at News 12 Westchester. Janine was the atypical news director. In fact, many of us, referred to her not as Janine or Ms. Rose. We called her Aunt Janine because she respected what we used to do. And he said, "Look, so and so knows what they're doing. Leave them alone." And that's how it was working at News 12. Not anymore, of course. I mean, if you watch News 12 now, you can see it's a whole different ball game. But back then, with those of us who were old timers who had been there for many, many years, we knew. I always used to tell you, the viewer, I will tell you when it's time to get concerned or when to get scared or when to get, upset about a particular weather pattern. So that's number one. I thank Billy the Kid for that. And number two, we apparently have a new person, Joe. Anup Patel Vlogs.
Yes.
And hitting the chat board and hitting it rather nicely, I might add.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see his messages. Congratulations on your aviation license.
Yes, indeed. It's nice to have somebody. A weather aviation license. Yes.
His aviation weather license. That's what I said.
Right. The executive producer making sure that we say this correctly. So congratulations, Anup.
Yes. And he says that watching us, it helped him. That's terrific. That makes my day. That makes my day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, by the way, I don't know if you saw it, Joe, on Facebook. I shared a memory on this date in 2019 when Mrs. Rayo baked that butter pecan cake. That was. Now, you have to understand this, folks. If you're on my Facebook page, you'll see it because my personal page, as I shared the memory. In fact, you know what? I think I could probably pull up some pictures. Hang on a second.
You're still not over that, are you?
Yes. Okay. No. God, no. So the story behind this cake was that I found this recipe. Right. She's on delay.
Yes.
I thought this is the cake, okay? Now the picture is, believe me when I tell you, this thing was huge, all right? And it had eight sticks of butter in it, and then of course there was butter for the frosting. It was a butter pecan cake, and I came from a family where I had two uncles that were bakers. In fact, my uncle John, who's like, I think in his mid-80s now, he still has his bread business, and he supplies Italian bread to all the supermarkets in New Jersey. God bless him. I don't know how he does it, but he's still doing it. And my cousin has they have a bakery, I think in Scotch Plains in New Jersey. Anyway, back to this cake. So I found this recipe, and Joe gave it to Renata, and she baked me this cake. A slice of this cake was 800 calories, okay? A slice. And I'm not talking about a big slice either.
Butter in
How many? What was that, Renata? How many sticks?
There wasn't 8 sticks of butter. Oh my gosh.
Well, wasn't there 8 sticks of butter between the cake and the icing?
No. No, there wasn't that much. I
Well,
can go look it up for sure because I still have the recipe
but I have
stored.
to tell you, I
Why
don't,
don't you make another one and
No.
no,
mail it to him
I
in
dislike.
Georgia?
I dislike cake to begin with. I dislike just about anything that's sweet. I don't have a sweet tooth at all. But so I do like just a few certain things like homemade apple pie. I don't like store bought apple pie and chocolate fudge pecan pie. There's a Kentucky bluegrass pie, which is kind of the same thing that has bourbon in it, and I really like that. But everything else, donuts and cream puffs and uh, cannolis, Italian pastries I cannot stand, Italian cookies I cannot stand. But this cake was it was totally amazing. It was amazing. So I reshared that memory, Joe.
She made it. It looks like it was made right around my birthday. My birthday is August the 2nd. Yours is in January. We have something to shoot for next month, Joe. If you ever come back this way up north, we'll be ready for you with that cake.
Yes, on the post I wrote the original post I wrote it was August 1st was this memory. It came up today. Why I don't know. So it was right around your birthday, Joe. Like you said,
Right.
August 1st, 2019. And the Lord said, "Let there be a multi-layered butter pecan cake with frosting made with 3 pounds of butter. Let it also be 800 calories a slice and to die for." The cake was baked by Mrs. Rayo, who not only cooks but can fix snow blowers, lawnmowers, car engines, washing machines, and other appliances.
That's the truth.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I call her Mrs. Goodwrench.
Yeah, she is. She is. So anyhow, there was one other thing. They opened an Aldi's in town today, so it was packed.
I would expect, yeah.
It was the first time. It was the first time I've ever been to an Aldi's, and I came away with an Aldi's shopping bag. Okay, and I also came away with a bunch of $5 off coupons. So it was very productive today.
So you went from one end of the spectrum emotionally to the other, between thinking that you had lost JJ to the opening of Aldi's.
Yes, it really was. It was from distraught to joy.
And by the way, I know exactly how you felt with JJ because when I had my Yorkie, and we live in a wooded area, I was surrounded on all sides by woodland, and the thing we had to always be concerned about was he would go crazy when he saw a deer or especially a squirrel. And one day Renata just opened the door because there was a squirrel within range, and he just went right straight through the door, ran after the squirrel, ran into the woods. And honestly, you said you were near tears today. I was near tears. I thought I had lost my Yorkie. I didn't think I'd ever see him again. But my daughter, of course, coming through and finding him somewhere in the woods. And I was driving around like a maniac looking for him. And when I came back, there she was, holding the dog. And I didn't know whether or not I wanted to wring the dog's neck or hug him to pieces or whatever. I'm not.
I chose the hugging.
Yes.
Yeah, he was a little bit upset too because he must have lost his way. They got on a deer scent and he just took off. And I'm thinking that he probably, because it's really wooded there and mountainous, so
right.
it's easy to get lost. And then I was worried because he wears a harness. It's an orange. It's an orange and black harness, so you can see him if he's near you and he's in wooded area. You see the orange; it stands out like a sore thumb. I couldn't see any of that, and I started worrying because it was so wooded. Did he get, maybe he got the harness caught in some, there's some thorny trees down here and bushes that he got it caught in there and he can't get out. All these things run through your head. Did he run out to the main road and get hit by a car because he loves to chase cars? But but thankfully he just showed up, just came up, was back on the trail and walked up right up to my friend who was down there, looking for me while looking for the dog. While I had got into my truck and had to drive up to the top of the mountain to call the animal shelter, to call the vet, get all let them know in case somebody turns in a dog. So anyway, Billy the Kid says, my grandson may use such a thing, but a leash is just as productive. Are you saying that you use a leash on your grandson? I mean, I'm not understanding that. What does that mean, Joe? What does that mean? My grandson may use such a thing, but a leash is just as productive. So I'm not thinking you're putting a leash on your grandson. So
I don't know, but thank you, Howard Hassel, for hitting Super Chat tonight and seeing some names I haven't seen in a long time here, like Garo Vestas. I've seen.
Well,
him.
he comes out with the snow, and then he goes he goes into hibernation as soon as they change the clocks.
Yeah.
All the snow lovers are coming back now. So anyway, that, like I said, that was my day. It was destroyed. And you know what? I need to get one of those devices that Garo's mentioning here, that it has a battery, and you get the GPS, and you probably have your dog on the GPS dog tag. Northern Grace, thank you. Definitely going to do that. It's most of the area gets a signal. I just can't make phone calls when I'm in certain spots. It'd be a dead spot, but I could go to where there's not a dead spot, and get the signal that I need. So it's on my to-do list of things to get done for Christmas. But he is chipped, so I'm happy about that. So look, on that note, Joe, I think we should say goodnight because it's Thursday and I want 2 days off, and so do you. So I guess we come back on Sunday.
Sunday at 11 o'clock.
11 a.m. Okay.
Right.
Very good. So everybody, have a great Friday and a great weekend. We'll see you on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And that's it. I have nothing left to say. I am all spent here.
Well, then I will.
You say it.
I will say, thank you for watching. Thank you for all the Super Chat hits. And nighty-night, everyone.
Nighty-night.